Yennier Cano was basically unhittable to begin the 2023 season, but we all had to know that wasn't going to last. And he's hit a little bit of a rough patch lately. But can you blame him? I mean, somebody else in the O's has got to pick him up. Well, that didn't happen on Tuesday night. As I'll recap the Orioles' walk-off loss to the Milwaukee Brewers, coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Wednesday, June 7th, 2023, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap a tough Orioles loss as they fell 4-3 to the Milwaukee Brewers in 10 innings on Tuesday night. I'll get you the 5 things you need to know from that one. And then we'll talk a bit about Yennier Cano, who did give up a run that tied the game in the 8th inning on Tuesday, and why he struggled a little bit lately, or at least compared to how good he was early in the season and what it means for the rest of the Orioles bullpen. And then to finish things up, we will talk about the O's roster move they made on Tuesday as they brought back Danny Coulombe from the bereavement list and decided to keep Josh Lester and instead send Terrin Vavra down to Triple-A. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB, and when you enter promo code LockedOnMLB, with your shorts or your pants, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. So we start today's episode with an Orioles loss. Final score from Milwaukee on Tuesday night is the Brewers 4 and the Orioles 3 in 10 innings. Brewers walk it off on a Joey Wiemer 2-out, 2-strike walk-off double off of Austin Voth in the bottom of the 10th inning after the Orioles failed to score in the top of the 10th. O's lose the opening game of this 3-game set in Milwaukee and drop to 37-23 on the season as they have now played 60 games here in 2023. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles 4-3 loss to the Brewers. And the first thing you need to know is that the Orioles frankly just struck out way too many times to even think about winning this ball game. Now, the Orioles were retired 30 times in this game, playing 10 innings, so there's 3 extra outs. More than half of them were strikeouts. 16 strikeouts for the Orioles offense on Tuesday night. And there were some bad perpetrators. Ramón Urías had 4. We'll get to him. Anthony Santander had 3. He also just missed a 2-run homer in the 8th inning as well, but still ended up with 3 strikeouts. Ryan Mountcastle and Jorge Mateo each had 2. And among the Orioles starters, 8 of the 9 starters struck out in this game. The only one who did not was Adam Frazier, who actually had a nice day at the top of the order, went 2 for 5 with a single and a double in this game. But everybody else struck out even at least once, including Josh Lester, who, only appeared in this game as a pinch hitter in the top of the 10th with 2 on and 2 out and struck out against Peter Strzelecki, although Lester was a couple feet away from a go-ahead double or maybe even a go-ahead 3-run homer. We would have had to build the Josh Lester statue if that ball in the 10th inning had stayed fair, but he strikes out as well, 16 strikeouts, and the kicker is not just 16 strikeouts for the Orioles offense, but 1 walk. Yes, 1 walk in this entire game, and that walk was not really earned. It was an intentional walk to Adley Rutschman in the top of the 10th inning before Lester came up. That is not a good night at the plate for the O's. I mean, Freddie Peralta was great. He struck out 9 over 5 innings. And then it wasn't the best of the Brewers relievers, but they just came in, and the Orioles got only 2 hits off the bullpen in 5 innings after getting 6 hits and 2 runs off of Peralta in 5 innings. And this offense just really did not do enough in this game. And when you strike out that much, it's just going to hurt you. I mean, the biggest one probably, you could say it was Josh Lester's pinch hit strikeout in the 10th inning. Ryan McKenna came in for Santander defensively, so the Orioles went to Lester when his spot came up 2 on, 2 out in the 10th. But the reason the Orioles were in that spot is because Jorge Mateo struck out to open up the 10th inning. They had the zombie runner on second. Mateo was trying to bunt, couldn't get it down, got it to 2 strikes, and then swung at a sweeper that was, more than halfway into the other batter's box to strike out. He went 0 for 4 with 2 Ks. His struggles continue. Just a bad night for the swings and misses from the Orioles. Now, the positive side offensively, Aaron Hicks and Ryan O'Hearn, the two unlikely heroes of the O's lineup right now, well, they did all they could for the O's to try and win this game on Tuesday night. Aaron Hicks had a big home run in this one, a 2-run shot in the second inning off of Peralta, tied this game at 2 after the Orioles gave up a 2 spot in the bottom of the first inning, and Hicks just continues to swing the bat incredibly well since the Orioles brought him over. The 2-run homer, 100 off the bat, 372 feet for his first long ball as an Oriole. And Hicks did only go 1 for 4 on the night. That was his only hit, also had a strikeout. But his other 2 balls in play could have easily been hits. There was a big swing in the 5th inning where he hit one of the gap. It looked like it was going to be a 2-run double for Hicks, but Joey Wiemer, who was really a star of this game for Milwaukee, made a great running catch in center field. And then Hicks was robbed of a single in the 8th inning when Luis Urías made a diving play in the infield for the Brewers. So Hicks continues to swing it well. And Ryan O'Hearn. How about Ryan O'Hearn? 2 for 4 in this game with a single and then what could have been the game-winning homer in the 7th inning, a solo shot that he hit the other way off of Joel Payamps to put the Orioles up 3-2 at the time. O'Hearn with his 3rd homer in an Orioles uniform, 106.3 off the bat, 389 feet. Just took a fastball the other way for a really, really impressive homer. O'Hearn, who's from the area, had over 30 family members in the stands to watch him homer for the O's. Just unfortunately, the rest of the offense did not do enough. And the third thing you need to know from this one is I talked about a bad offensive performance and, the Orioles really striking out way too much 16 times. But the main perpetrator on Tuesday night was Ramón Urías. And his struggles since coming off the injured list after that lower body injury, it's just been a disaster for Urías. He got the start at third base, hitting 7th for the Orioles on Tuesday night. He continues to start at third because Jorge Mateo's still in there and Gunnar Henderson still dealing with the back issue. Now, we got a good news on Henderson on Tuesday. The Orioles say they feel he's going to be in the lineup here on Wednesday. But it meant one more day that Urías was definitely in there, and he made a couple of nice plays at third base, don't get me wrong, but 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts for Ramón Urías. Since returning off the injured list a couple of weeks ago, Urías is now 2 for 25 with a double, a single, 9 strikeouts, 1 RBI, and 0 walks since he came back to the lineup. He has been borderline unplayable. His offense hasn't been there this year. His defense, although smaller sample size, has been much worse than it was when he won the Gold Glove at third base last season. I know a lot of people are worried about Ryan Mountcastle, who had another 0 for 4. I'm honestly more worried about Ramón Urías right now because it is not good at the plate. Let's get Gunnar back. Let's call Jordan Westburg up here. I don't know if I want to play Ramón Urías anymore, at least for the time being. Fourth thing you need to know from this one, switching it over to the pitching side, is that Kyle Gibson honestly really impressed me more than any other start he's made this year. That's because I kind of wrote off his start in the first inning, and how could you not? Gibson allows 2 runs in the first inning. He throws 35 pitches in the first inning, and got lucky to get out of it there. He stranded the bases loaded in the first after giving up 2 runs. It was not pretty, and it looked like it was just going to be one of those starts for the 35-year-old Gibson, who you hope he keeps in almost every game, but at least once a month or so, he's going to just kind of get blown up, and it's going to happen because that's what happens when you have 35-year-old Kyle Gibson. But he just shut things down after that. 4 more scoreless innings. He did pitch into the 6th, but he walked the leadoff man in the 6th inning and then came out of the game. So Gibson's final line, 5+ innings, 2 runs on 5 hits, 7 strikeouts to 2 walks, now down to a 3.87 ERA on the season. 6 hard hit balls against him, and he only threw 96 pitches in 5 innings despite a 35-pitch first inning for Gibson. 14 whiffs was pretty impressive for Kyle Gibson on 37 swings. He had the sweeper going. Didn't use as many changeups as usual. Only 8 changeups in this one. That had been kind of his number 2 pitch for the last month or so, but it was more sweepers. He threw 20 of them. I believe that was the most sweepers he's thrown in any game this year. And it really worked out. The sinker was in the zone. The sweeper was getting chases. It was a nice mix from Kyle Gibson once again. And after that first inning was a disaster, I was so impressed by how he bounced back in that game. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 4-3 walk-off loss to the Brewers is that, listen, the bullpen, they kept the O's right there. Yes, Yennier Cano gave up a run in the eighth to tie the game. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And yes, Austin Voth did give up the walk-off double with 2 strikes on the 9-hitter Joey Wiemer in the 10th inning. But really, what was this bullpen supposed to do? Mike Baumann came in to relieve Kyle Gibson, did a great job with a scoreless inning. Danny Coulombe got 2 huge outs. Yennier Cano got out of a jam in the 7th, did allow a run in the 8th, but still kept it tied. Felix Bautista just keeps getting better and better somehow. 1, 2, 3 innings, strikes out the side against 3, 4, 5 in the Brewers' order on 11 pitches. Got the 3 strikeouts on 11 pitches. It was insanity from Felix Bautista, who, on his 11 pitches, the Brewers swung at 6 of them. They swung and missed at all 6. He did not have a ball that was even contacted by a Brewers hitter. He went with 9 fastballs, 1 splitter, and 1 slider. He was up to 102 with the fastball, averaging 100. It was, honestly, that inning was ridiculous. It was ridiculous for Felix Bautista. 9 of the 11 pitches were strikes, just absurd. And then Austin Voth comes in, and he makes 1 bad hanging breaking ball to Wiemer that he hits into the corner to win the game. But it was a nice job by Voth. The zombie runner on second. Orioles don't score in the top half. You have a razor-thin margin of error, and Voth came 1 pitch away from finishing it off. He just couldn't do the job. But I thought the bullpen, they get the loss. Voth gets the loss. Blown save for Cano, but I thought they were still good in this one. But speaking of Yennier Cano, he did give up a run. And if he doesn't give up that run, the Orioles win the game, because if he gets through the 8th, Bautista's getting through the 9th, and the O's win it. And it's been a little bit of a struggle lately for Cano. I mean, not that he's been bad, but he hasn't been as good as he was at the beginning of the year. And you had to expect regression, but it is coming now for Yennier Cano. So coming up next, we'll talk about what that regression has looked like and why it's come for Cano now here kind of late in May and early in June. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. Now, it's just so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you, right? You never take a moment to think about what you might need from yourself. Well, maybe take a look at therapy, because therapy can give you the tools to find more balance in your life, so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. Therapy has worked for me. It's worked for people I know. It can work for you as well, whether it comes to learning positive coping skills, setting boundaries, empowering you to be the best you. Therapy can do it all. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And you just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. So find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnMLB. So the Orioles lose to the Brewers 4-3 in walk-off fashion in the 10th inning on Tuesday night in Game 1 of a 3-game set. But you can catch Game 2 tonight at the same time, 7:40 p.m. Eastern Time. You can catch every pitch of the Orioles' hometown broadcast on the SXM app with SiriusXM. Just go on the app and search Orioles. But as the O's lost the game, it was technically a blown save for Yennier Cano, who came into this game in the 7th inning with runners on first and third, got himself a huge strikeout to keep it a 3-2 game. When he came back out there in the 8th, it was a little shaky. He issued a leadoff walk, and as we know, those leadoff walks always seem to score, and that is what happened right there. He walked Blake Perkins, and eventually Perkins steals second, comes around to score on a Bryce Terang RBI single that ties the game at 3. Cano did get out of a jam, had 2 more runners on in the 8th inning, but kept it 3-3, which was nice to see. So we went an inning and a third, 1 run, 1 hit, 3 Ks, 1 regular walk, 1 intentional walk as well, 25 pitches for Cano in the outing. And listen, the ERA is up to 1.11 for Yennier Cano now on the season. Now, that is still an elite ERA, but his stuff is just playing a little bit differently lately. And it's been interesting to see what's going on, because I think you can really look at Tuesday's outing. Obviously, you can look at the fact that he gave up a run, and that really tells the story. But you look at the pitch mix and what's going on with the stuff, and you start to tell what's really going on. Cano threw 25 pitches on Tuesday. 22 of them were sinkers. 22 sinkers and 3 changeups for Yennier Cano. Now, his sinker is great, so I'm totally fine with him throwing it a lot. He had 10 called strikes on it, but he only got 1 whiff on 7 swings total in the game on Tuesday, and to only throw 3 changeups. And I get he didn't face a lot of lefties, but to only throw 3 changeups, that was his money pitch when he was literally unhittable early in the season. And he's kind of gone away from it. And one of the issues has been when he's throwing the changeup, he's not getting nearly as many swings and misses, but he's also just not throwing it as much lately, relying much more heavily on the sinker, and he still hasn't thrown a slider since mid-May. So at this point, he's basically been a one-pitch pitcher lately, and as good as that pitch can be, it's going to make it easier to hit, and that is what's been happening. After Cano's first 17 appearances went like this: 21 2/3 innings, no runs, 4 hits, 25 strikeouts, and 0 walks. Just an otherworldly first 17 games. Here's his last 9 appearances, including giving up the run on Tuesday night. 10 2/3 innings, 14 hits, 4 earned runs, that's a 3.38 ERA, 3 walks, just 8 strikeouts, and 12 hard hit balls in those 10 2/3 innings of the 14 hits that he has allowed. So guys are squaring him up more. He's throwing less changeups, and he's just not getting the swings and misses on that pitch either. Now, we knew regression was going to come for Yennier Cano. I mean, I just read off those stats in the first 17 appearances. No pitcher in baseball is going to maintain a stretch like that. It just wasn't going to happen. We all had to know this regression was coming. Now, it has been a little bit of a longer stretch than you would like of Cano kind of giving up a run almost every other time he goes out there. Again, as I said, 4 runs in his last 10 2/3. But he's still been very effective, and I still fully trust him as kind of the 7th, 8th inning guy for the Orioles bullpen right now. But as I said, regression was going to hit Cano, and it's hitting him right now. And it's not the worst regression I've seen. It's not otherworldly. It's not a situation where you have to move him out of the 8th or bury him in the bullpen or anything. He's still very effective. That sinker's still very good. And hopefully he starts to throw more changeups again. Maybe he's lost the feel for that pitch a little bit, but he's walking not a lot of guys, but 3 guys compared to 0 in his first 17 appearances. That was always the issue with him. He seemed to fix it. Leadoff walk killed him on Tuesday night. But my reason for pointing this out and kind of talking about Cano on this episode is, one, because he did give up another run on Tuesday. But the other thing really is, this is not just about Cano. Like, he's still been great. He's still got a 1.11 ERA. Again, I still trust him. The stuff's still amazing. He's still throwing mostly strikes. The thing that's concerning is somebody else has got to step up and help him out, right? Because the O's are not going to have Dylan Tate. They've put Michael Givens back on the injured list. Cionel Perez I don't know what he is. He may not be an Oriole for much longer, but he's certainly not the 2022 version of Cionel Perez. Austin Voth has had his up and downs, but I mean, you could tell when Brandon Hyde goes to Austin Voth there in the 10th inning. I mean, he was 1 pitch away from getting out of it, keeping the game tied. Unfortunately, he hangs a breaking ball to Joey Wiemer. But if you really think about it, I mean, Danny Coulombe is the Orioles' number 3 reliever right now, but he pitched the 7th inning. It's very surprising that Brandon Hyde did not go to Brian Baker in that 10th inning. But when you think about it, I mean, Baker's really had his struggles lately throughout the month of May. And so is it really a huge difference between Voth and Baker right now? I'm not sure. And that's really the big thing here. Because Cano being literally unhittable and not giving up any base runners, let alone any runs, he could cover up for a lot of deficiencies that any reliever is having. And I'm not saying the bullpen is bad, because it's not. It's been great this year. But somebody's got to step up when you don't have Tate, you don't have Givens, and Cano is just merely good and not otherworldly unhittable. When he's merely good, you're going to need somebody else to step in there. And hopefully it's Baker. Maybe it can be Austin Voth. Maybe Cionel Perez finds it. Whoever it's going to be, somebody's got to step up in there. More so for Cano's sake. He can't be trusted to do this every single time because he's going to regress a little bit. He can't be what he was in April and mid-May. He's going to be more like this pitcher that's still going to get a lot of outs, but he's going to give up some runs. So somebody's got to step in there for the O's at this point. Hopefully it's a couple of guys, but at least somebody's got to get up there for Baltimore. But speaking of Danny Coulombe, who did pitch on Tuesday night and got a couple of outs for the Orioles out of the bullpen, he returned after going on the bereavement list on Saturday. And the Orioles, with the corresponding move, actually did make a little bit of a surprising move with who they sent down to Triple-A. And coming up next to finish off the pod, we'll talk about what that move was and why the Orioles did it. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs, by far, the most comfortable pair of shorts I have ever owned. Now, they've got shorts, they've got pants. You can go to birddogs.com, check out all of their amazing products. I've got the shorts, and I absolutely love the Bird Dog shorts. They're so comfy. They've got this perfect kind of slick fabric that feels so nice. It's cooling as well, especially as we get into the summer here. But also, they've got the lining in there that makes them more comfortable. But you can kind of wear them anywhere. They can be athletic shorts. They can also be nicer shorts that you wear to anything. That's the best part about Bird Dogs as well. And if you go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB and you enter the promo code LockedOnMLB, not only will you get potentially some great shorts or pants if you're looking to buy some, but also they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. It's a great deal. So go to birddogs.com, get these amazing shorts or pants right now. Do not wait. Best shorts you will ever wear, and you'll get them at birddogs.com. So the Orioles fell to the Brewers 4-3 in 10 innings on Tuesday, but chance to even the series tonight, Game 2, and you can catch every pitch of the action on the Orioles' hometown radio broadcast if you just check out the SXM app. That's the SiriusXM app, or on SiriusXM, just search Orioles. So O's made a roster move before Tuesday's game, and it did impact the game. It was Yennier Cano who came back off the bereavement list for the Orioles. Of course, we wish Danny and his family all the best for whatever it was that put him on the bereavement list this weekend. But he went on there Saturday after he had a dominant performance in San Francisco out of the bullpen on Friday. He returned for 2/3 of an inning on Tuesday night for the Orioles. Unfortunately, was not able to finish that 7th inning. Yennier Cano had to come in and do it, but he went 2/3 of an inning, a K, a walk, and a hit allowed for Yennier Cano, who has really been just great this year for the Orioles, and it was great to have him back, lowering his ERA to 2.01 on the year. But I think I assumed, and many of you assumed, that when Coulombe came back, the Orioles' easy move would just be to send Josh Lester back down to Triple-A. He's got options. Lester was just kind of activated Saturday when the Orioles put Coulombe on the bereavement list. He gets that big 2-run single on Sunday, but you figured, hey, he's more of a Triple-A guy. You know, the Orioles were running with 14 hitters and 12 pitchers when Coulombe went away. So now that he's back, they'll even it up. They'll send Josh Lester down. But instead, they went with Terrin Vavra. They kept Josh Lester up. He actually pinch hit in the 10th, as I mentioned, on Tuesday. Did strike out to end the inning with 2 on and 2 out. But they sent down Terrin Vavra. And at first, I was surprised. I was like, wow, I can't believe with Lester just kind of being the easy choice, they went with Vavra. When you dig into a little more, it does make a little more sense. Now, neither of these things make as much sense as Jordan Westburg being here would be, but that's neither here nor there. Terrin Vavra, 27 games this year, 56 plate appearances, hitting .245 with a .315 on base and a .245 slugging percentage, has an 81 WRC plus, which means he's been 19% worse than a league average hitter at the plate this year. He's got 12 hits. All of them are singles. No extra base hits on the season, just 1 career home run, 9% walk rate to a 21% strikeout rate. He has not been a productive hitter. Now, he has been able to play the infield and the outfield, but none of them to like an elite level. And when you really think about it, yeah, Terrin Vavra can slap the ball around the field a little bit, but listen, he hasn't played since May 31st. He had his last hit on May 26th. He's kind of fallen out of the lineup. And I get it, right? I mean, Gunnar Henderson's swinging it much better. You've got Ryan O'Hearn swinging a great bat. You know, he has 2 hits with the home run on Tuesday, just continues that. So you feel better about playing O'Hearn. And even with Mullins out, you have Hicks in, who's been playing so well. You can't sit Aaron Hicks at the moment. Austin Hayes has been great. Santander's swinging it. It's tough to find a spot for Terrin Vavra right now, especially when he hits for just no power. And I've talked about this on the podcast before. If you're going to have no power, you can still make it in the big leagues, but you have to be a special hitter, like Luis Ariz is for the Marlins, hitting almost 400. Vavra is not a special hitter with no power. So he goes down, and the big reason is, listen, O'Hearn and Lester can both play the outfield. And they can both play the infield. O'Hearn at first, Lester can play first and third base as well, and they can both play both corner outfield positions. When you combine that with the fact that you have Hicks and Hayes and Santander and McKenna who can all play the outfield, and then you've got Mateo and Urías and Henderson and Frazier all in the infield, and then Lester is an infielder too, you're kind of set in terms of versatility. So as long as you think Josh Lester isn't a huge defensive downgrade from Vavra, which he's a little bit of a downgrade, but I don't think it's that big a one, you're just taking whose bat you trust better. And with Lester's power, I think at this point, maybe you do trust Josh Lester's bat over Terrin Vavra's. And that's why they made the move. And I said this the last time when the Orioles sent down Vavra the first time they did it this season and then called him back up. I said it then, I'll say it now. Terrin Vavra, just with his player profile, is never going to be an everyday impact player for the Orioles. He's just not going to be. He's going to be a depth guy who comes up and plays a utility role off the bench, gets some starts, maybe goes back down to Triple-A. I just never see him, and especially with, Cowser, Westberg, Ortiz coming soon, he's just not going to be an everyday guy with the O's. He might not have much of a role with the Orioles at all for the rest of the season if those young guys I just mentioned get to the big league soon. It is tough for Vavra, but just you got to show at least the semblance of power to make it in the big leagues, and he's just not doing that now. So they're going to give Josh Lester a try. Again, I wish it was Jordan Westberg, but for now it's Lester, and we'll see what he can do. But that's it for today's episode. I will be back with you tomorrow. Just wanted to apologize to the YouTube viewers here of the podcast this week. As I mentioned on both Monday and Tuesday's episodes, I am traveling this week, actually not in Baltimore right now. I am recording this from a hotel room in St. Louis. And because of just the Wi-Fi situation, an audio podcast was basically the only thing I could do. There was no way to get on and stream any kind of video podcast. So on YouTube, we've got the audio with a couple of pictures for you to look at. But in general, it's going to be more of a bare bones on YouTube. And it's going to be that way Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week. So you'll get the full audio podcast, but the video version on YouTube will still be there, just a little bit lesser. And then back on Monday, I'll be back to my usual YouTube and audio schedule. And make sure you are subscribing on YouTube, liking, and commenting on the videos. We are very, very close to 3,000 YouTube subscribers. I'm going to do an awesome giveaway here on the pod when I get to 3,000, but you have to be subscribed to Locked On Orioles on YouTube to be entered to win the prize. It's going to be some cool Orioles gear, so make sure to go subscribe to Locked On Orioles on YouTube. And I'll be back tomorrow. We'll recap Game 2 between the Brewers and the Orioles. And hey, if you have any recommendations for what to do, what to eat, what to see in St. Louis, you can send them my way as well at Locked On Orioles on Twitter. And I will be back with you tomorrow. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.